A Ukrainian jet flew into a corridor protected by more than 120 Russian missiles till in just seconds, a command post turned into a fireball.
This is CNN breaking news.
10:03 a.m. A Ukrainian SU-27 skimmed just 450 feet above the frozen tree line of occupied Kharkiv Oblast, carrying only one weapon, a JDAM-ER designed to glide more than 70 kilometers and punch directly into one building that Russia believed was untouchable. This wasn't just another strike run. That command post was the nerve center for nearly 40 Russian units, guarded by S-300s, S-350Os, and S-400s capable of locking targets from hundreds of kilometers away. Every radar sweep, every pulse of X-band energy, every predictive trajectory calculation stacked the odds against him. Before we dive into the chaos, let me ask you, if the path ahead of you ended with a blast strong enough to collapse a 9-story building in under 5 seconds, would you still take off? He did, and the sky answered immediately. 10:03 a.m., just beyond the tree line of occupied Kharkiv Oblast, a Ukrainian SU-27 cuts through the morning haze at barely 450 feet. The pilot rides the terrain like a moving blade, altitude shifting by only a few feet at a time, throttling back to save every kilogram of fuel for the part of the mission that actually matters. His objective seems simple on paper: reach the 72-kilometer release window, deploy a JDAM-ER, and slip away before the Russians even realize they were part of the story. Simple missions rarely stay simple. Inside a makeshift Russian command shack about 80 kilometers ahead, 2 operators scroll through Telegram instead of watching their radar feed. They have no idea a 30-ton jet is racing toward their sector. No idea that terrain, timing, and human instinct are about to collide. For a moment, the SU-27's threat receiver stays silent. Too silent. Then, a sudden spike of high-frequency energy flashes across the display. Not a lock, not even a full scan, just a single electronic tap on the shoulder. At 82 kilometers, a lone Book M3 support launcher wakes up. 19M3 17MA missile roars off the rail, not to kill, but to confirm. A probing shot, a question fired into the sky. Who's flying down there? The pilot reacts instantly. Chaff blasts out behind him in a shimmering cloud of aluminum strips, each cut to half the book's radar wavelength. He snaps into a tight left bank, dropping from 450 feet to just under 220 in less than 4 seconds. The missile loses guidance, arcs wide, and self-destructs above a field dusted with frozen grass. The danger is gone, but the cost remains. He's burned 35 kilograms of fuel, and 2 minutes he cannot afford to lose. And now Russia knows something is coming. They just don't know what or how close it already is. 10:11 a.m. 8 minutes into the run, the calm sky turns deceptive. 2 Russian early warning radars, a 91N6E and a 96L6, sweep their beams across nearly 300 kilometers of airspace. And for the first time, one of them catches a flicker of something low, fast, and not supposed to be there. The SU-27's threat receiver lights up in a burst of amber warnings. X-band radiation, bearing 045, strength increasing. The pilot knows exactly what that means. He has been noticed. Then it happens. From a site roughly 288 kilometers away, an S-400 battery launches a 40 N6E missile, an 8-meter spear accelerating past Mach 13 before the booster smoke even dissipates. This isn't a warning shot. This is the kind of missile that reshapes a pilot's heartbeat. To the audience watching this, imagine being in that cockpit. One spike of radar energy can change everything. Would you dive? Would you climb? Or would you trust terrain more than technology? Let me know what you would have done. The Ukrainian pilot shoves the throttles forward and dives. 450 feet, 390, 320. But flying this low comes with a cruel cost. Fuel burn skyrockets to nearly 270 kilograms per minute, more than double the rate at cruise altitude. Every second of survival takes away a second from his route home. And Russia isn't finished. A second strike comes from a S-350 Vityaz system near Lipetsk. 2 9M96E2 missiles arc upward on predictive trajectories. No lock, no confirmation, just pure math and a bet that Ukrainian aircraft follow patterns. Both missiles self-destruct after 9 seconds, but they force the SU-27 to bank northwest, straight toward an even denser wall of defenses waiting in Chapter 3. The pilot doesn't know it yet, but his next climb will trigger the most dangerous moment of the entire mission. 10:28 The moment the pilot has been dreading arrives. To release the JDAM-ER at full reach, the SU-27 must climb, not gradually, not cautiously, but in one decisive push that will expose him to every radar within 100 kilometers. At exactly 41 kilometers from the release point, he pulls back on the stick. The altimeter unwinds upward, 6,000 feet, 12,000, 19,000, until it stabilizes at 27,400 feet. That movement is all Russia needs. Within seconds, an S-300 PMU-2 battery, positioned roughly 80 kilometers away, snaps onto his radar altimeter signal, the one system he cannot turn off. Its grill-pan radar slices through the air with pencil-thin beams, tracking the jet with unnerving precision. 3 9M82M2 missiles launch in a ripple-fire burst. At over 2,500 meters per second, they close distance in less than a minute. The first missile struggles as the SU-27 slams into a descending turn, dropping nearly 700 feet in under 2 seconds. It loses its command beam and detonates harmlessly in the sky, behind him. The second missile gets closer, much closer. Chaff blooms in a dense metallic curtain, and for a moment the missile wavers its operator, shifting focus to the larger radar return. The decoy wins. The missile veers off and detonates above a frozen ridge. The third missile refuses to be fooled. Its operator stays locked onto the true target, adjusting course with small but perfect inputs. At one point, 2 kilometers out, the pilot executes the maneuver he hoped he wouldn't need. A full power brake over the ridgeline, pulling more than 6.5 G as the frame groans under the stress. The missile overruns the ridge by a fraction of a second and detonates. Fragments rake the airframe, punching 10 to 12 small holes through the upper fuselage. Engine temperatures spike but stabilize. Hydraulics dip but remain inside the green. The aircraft is wounded but still flying. And now comes the moment everything has been building toward. At 26,900 feet, with the RWR screaming and fuel slipping, below 20%, the pilot presses the release. The JDAM-ER drops cleanly, its wings snapping open after 3.3 seconds, and begins the long glide toward the Russian command post. Behind him, the sky is already shifting again, Russian radars recalculating, missiles rearming, and new threats forming like storm fronts. The strike has begun, but the escape is only just starting. 10:33 a.m. 30 seconds after the JDAM-ER leaves the rail, silence takes on a different meaning. The pilot isn't thinking about the bomb anymore. He's thinking about surviving the next 6 minutes. The SU-27 is no longer the sleek hunter that slipped across the treetops earlier. It is damaged, aerodynamically uneven, and burning fuel at a punishing rate. Structural readouts show 11 pressure leaks across the upper fuselage. The left engine runs 14 degrees hotter than normal. Hydraulic pressure sits barely above minimum flight threshold. And Russia is waking up. 2 long-range acquisition radars, 196L6 and 192N6, reactivate after the JDAM release spike, sweeping the skies with renewed urgency. Their screens show a single trace dipping from high altitude and skimming the ground at blistering speed. Within moments, a second S-300 battery, approximately 88 kilometers to the northeast, swings its engagement radar toward him. No launch yet, just the cold, mechanical process of target identification. A process that ends the same way every time, a firing command. The pilot pushes the aircraft down to 320 feet, then 270, then just under 200, as he squeezes into a shallow valley choked with bare winter trees. The closer he stays to the earth, the more clutter he forces into enemy radar displays. Hills, barns, power lines, everything becomes part of the shield. But ground-hugging flight has a cost. Fuel flow rises to nearly 290 kilograms per minute, leaving him with a hard truth. He may not have enough to fight, only enough to flee. Sensing the shift in geometry, the S-300 battery begins rotating to maintain angle. The engagement window grows tighter by the second. He banks hard west, disappearing behind a low ridge just as the targeting beams sweep past. For a moment, the sky goes quiet again, too quiet to trust. Because ahead of him, beyond the next radio horizon, lies a threat far more lethal than ground-based missiles. And it is already airborne, closing the distance. With predatory efficiency. 10:37 a.m. The threat no pilot wants to see appears on the SU-27's display. Two radar spikes materialize at the far edge of the scope, sharp, stable, and unmistakably airborne. Su-35S fighters. Distance: 150 kilometers. Closing speed: extreme. Their Urbis E radars begin painting the valley from above, each system capable of tracking 30 targets while guiding missiles toward 8 at once. Unlike ground-based radars limited by terrain, these fighters look down into every fold of the Earth where the Su-27 tries to hide. The lead Su-35 makes the first move. Its underwing pylon flashes, and a single R-37M missile tears free, an 8-meter Predator built for long-range kills. It accelerates past Mach 6 inches seconds before switching to a fuel-saving glide, covering nearly 2.2 kilometers every second as it descends toward the Ukrainian jet. The pilot knows the math. He has roughly 48 seconds before the missile's seeker activates at 25 kilometers. And once that happens, escape becomes a matter of meters, not miles. He pushes the aircraft into a shallow climb to gain just enough altitude for one last defensive maneuver. The damaged jet shudders as it ascends through 3,000 feet, then 6,000, the left engine temperature peaking again 19 degrees above safe margin. The R-37M updates its trajectory through constant data link streams from the Su-35S. Bearing 178, range 112 kilometers, angle tightening. It knows exactly where he is. At 7,800 feet, the pilot snaps into a descending spiral, an aggressive energy-dumping maneuver designed to force the missile to overshoot. G-load spikes, past 5.8. Alarms blare, and the weakened frame groans under the punishment. The R-37M's glide cone narrows, adjusts, then falters. The sudden drop in altitude forces the missile to pitch past its optimal lift angle. It swings wide by barely 180 meters, detonating in a distant flash that sends ripples through the thin morning air. But the escape has a price. The Su-27's fuel gauge now shows a brutal truth. 14% remaining. Too little for mistakes. Too little for another climb. Too little for anything but survival. 1041A. The cockpit feels smaller now. Not because of damage, but because every instrument scream carries the weight of a countdown. The Su-27 is wounded, leaking energy and fuel in ways no checklist can fully account for. Fuel remaining, 14%. Projected endurance, barely 6 minutes at low altitude. The only path home is the one with the fewest angles, straight, low, and unforgiving. The pilot drops the jet back toward the Earth, leveling off at 120 feet. At this altitude, the engines inhale more dust than air, every rise and fall of terrain becomes a threat, and the margin between controlled flight and disaster is measured in heartbeats. But down here, in the chaos of ground clutter, radar fades. Far behind him, Russian sensors scramble to rebuild a picture of the sky. The 96L6 tries to reacquire him, sweeping its range out to 300 kilometers, but all it sees are broken signatures flickering along the terrain power lines, irrigation towers, metallic roofs warmed by the sun. Everything becomes noise. An S-300 battery to the northeast attempts to lock onto the Su-27's altimeter spike again. It fails. The valley bends westward, swallowing the aircraft in a fold of terrain the radar cannot penetrate. But the greatest danger now is not missiles. It is consumption. At 120 feet, the aircraft burns almost 260 kilograms of fuel per minute, a rate it cannot sustain. The pilot shuts off every non-essential system, countermeasure dispensers, external lighting, diagnostic submodules, squeezing every remaining drop into distance instead of thrust. 1043A. The threat receiver quiets. 1044. The radar spikes vanish one by one. 1045. Only the hum of the engines remains. For the first time in 30 minutes, no one is shooting at him. And for the first time since release, The JDAM-ER's distant strike echoes back across encrypted channels, confirmation that the command post no longer exists. The mission is complete. Survival, however, still hangs on a razor's edge of fuel, distance, and hope. By 10:49 a.m., the SU-27 finally crossed back into friendly airspace. Barely flying, patched with holes, running on a fuel margin so thin it might as well have been hope. Behind him, the JDAM-ER had already rewritten the map, a command post gone, an entire sector thrown into confusion, and a reminder that precision can outrun even the most layered defenses. Operations like this don't become legends because they are flawless. They become legends because someone keeps going long after the margin for error disappears. And when a single aircraft survives a gauntlet of radars, missiles, and fighters just to deliver one weapon at the right moment, it says more about determination than any statistic ever could. If you've followed the story this far, tell me what moment hit you the hardest. The climb, the missile chase, the final escape? I'd love to hear what you think.